The Supreme Court is moving into its busy season with two major end-of-the-term decisions and several more on the way. The justices ruled unanimously yesterday that Philadelphia's foster care program cannot exclude a Catholic agency that does not allow same-sex couples to take in children. The court also rejected the latest challenge to Obamacare, ruling 7-2 that a group of states and two individuals supported by the Trump administration had no legal standing to challenge the health care law. Jan Crawford is at the Supreme Court following it all. Jan, these are two big rulings.
Big rulings, and really these were the first controversial cases that have been taken up by this newly conservative court with, of course, those three new justices appointed by former President Trump. And I got to say, what was most surprising, there was so much agreement.
We are done.
Ever since former President Obama signed the Affordable Care Act, the law has been the center of a political shouting match.
Fight, fight, healthcare is a human right. Repeal and replace Obamacare. You have to do it.
Hey crew, it's Adam. The Supreme Court just dropped a legal nuclear weapon on the White House. Late last night, in a stunning 7-2 decision, the nation's highest court effectively dismantled the foundation of Donald Trump's second-term presidency. They struck down his most aggressive executive orders. They rejected his claims of total authority.
NBC News Justice correspondent Pete Williams on both angles tonight. Pete, what are we hearing first from the conservative-leaning justices who upheld Obamacare?
Well, this is the third time the Supreme Court has spared President Obama's health care law by rejecting a Republican challenge. And this time, the court's three liberals were joined by four of those conservatives. That includes Clarence Thomas, who voted against Obamacare twice before, and Amy Coney Barrett, who Democrats considered a grave threat to the law during her confirmation. It was Samuel Alito and Neil Gorsuch who were the two dissenters. So now the details. Obamacare originally required nearly all Americans to get health insurance, that was the individual mandate, or pay an income tax penalty. In 2012, the Supreme Court upheld the law as a legitimate use of Congress's taxing power.
And they told the most power-hungry president in modern American history that he is not, in fact, above the Constitution. This is the biggest judicial check on a sitting president in over 50 years. And it came from a Supreme Court that includes three justices Trump himself appointed. Let me tell you exactly what happened, because this is the kind of ruling that rewrites the rules of American governance.
Thursday morning, we expected to get some decisions today, and we just got a big one. The justices rejecting another Republican challenge on Obamacare, ruling 7-2 to dismiss the challenge. Here was the case. It was the third major challenge to Obamacare in about 10 years. The case came out of 18 Republican-led states that sued Congress back in 2017 when it stopped enforcing the tax penalty that's built into the law.
Right.
So the challengers then argued the government's non-enforcement of the mandate rendered that provision of the law from 2010 illegal, which would suggest that the whole law cannot stand, and that was roundly rejected a moment ago.
Well, this is all, there's a political thing to think about here, Bill, and that is that for years during the Trump administration, when this challenge was mounted in the courts, the Democrats said that President Trump and all Republicans were against covering people with pre-existing conditions, and they would point to this case over and over again.
Throughout his second term, Trump has been issuing executive orders that massively expand presidential power far beyond anything previous presidents attempted. He claimed total authority over independent agencies like the Federal Communications Commission, the Federal Trade Commission, and the Securities and Exchange Commission. These agencies were designed by Congress to operate independently from political pressure, to make decisions based on expertise and law rather than White House whims. Trump said they report directly to him now. He claimed he could override their decisions. He claimed total control. He also asserted the right to federalize state National Guard units and deploy them for domestic law enforcement without the consent of governors, immigration enforcement, protest control, whatever he wanted. He claimed he could take soldiers from states and use them as his personal police force. He tried to give himself budgetary autonomy and control over federal hiring and firing that traditionally requires congressional approval. He issued executive orders claiming he could fire anyone, spend any money, restructure any agency, all without input from the people's representatives. Basically, Trump has been trying to turn the American presidency into an elected dictatorship. Unlimited power, no checks, no balances, just one man doing whatever he wants, and the Supreme Court just said no, emphatically, unanimously almost. The unsigned opinion invalidated Trump's directives, granting himself unilateral control over independent agencies and state National Guard units. It called them unconstitutional expansions that violate the separation of powers. Legal analysts are calling this a constitutional neutron bomb because it doesn't just strike down a few orders. It obliterates the entire legal framework Trump built to exercise unprecedented power. According to Reuters and NPR, the justices ruled that Trump's delegation orders claiming total authority over independent commissions and military deployments were unconstitutional. Total authority. That was Trump's actual language in his orders. He literally claimed total authority, and the court said the Constitution doesn't work that way. Presidents don't have total authority. They have limited powers defined by the Constitution and constrained by Congress and the courts. The emergency order specifically halts Trump's use of state National Guard troops for domestic law enforcement. This has been a major flashpoint for months. States like Oregon and Illinois have been fighting in court, arguing Trump can't just take control of their military forces. Lower courts blocked some deployments. Now the Supreme Court has shut down the entire framework Trump was using. But here's what makes this ruling truly devastating for Trump. In her concurring opinion, Justice Amy Coney Barrett wrote that no president may nullify Congress by decree. Read that again. A Trump appointee. Someone he put on the court specifically because he thought she'd be loyal, and she's telling him he can't just issue decrees that override congressional authority. That's enormous because it shows that even justices philosophically aligned with Trump recognize his power grabs are so extreme they threaten the constitutional order. Chief Justice John Roberts went even further. He warned that unchecked authority strikes at the marrow of the republic itself. The marrow of the republic. That's not legal jargon. That's the Chief Justice saying Trump's actions aren't just legally questionable, they're existentially dangerous to American democracy. If allowed to stand, they would fundamentally alter our government from a system of checks and balances to something approaching executive dictatorship. The practical impact is immediate and severe. White House officials told the Washington Post that the ruling effectively suspends over 30 executive orders. 30. That includes Trump's directives on immigration enforcement, budgetary autonomy, and federal layoffs, all invalid. Federal agencies are being forced to return to pre-order structures. Policies that have been in effect for months are suddenly being unwound. Programs operating under Trump's expanded authority have to stop. The entire administrative apparatus he built to exercise unprecedented presidential power is being dismantled by judicial order. This is happening at the worst possible time for Trump. He's already drowning in scandals, the Canada trade disaster, DOJ corruption investigations, Kash Patel's perjury issues, Adam Schiff's indictment backlash, the illegal White House demolition, Melania's lawsuit, and now the Supreme Court has taken away many of the tools he's been using to exercise power. He can't use executive orders to do whatever he wants anymore. He actually has to work within constitutional constraints. For a president who has built his entire governance model on unilateral action, that's catastrophic. Let me explain why this ruling is so much deeper than most people realize. Everyone's focused on the immediate impact, the 30 suspended orders, the halted deployments, the administrative chaos. But the deeper significance is what this says about the limits of presidential power and how fundamentally it rejects Trump's entire approach to governing. Trump has been operating on the theory that the presidency is essentially unlimited, that winning an election means you can do whatever you want. The Supreme Court just said that's completely wrong. That's not what the Constitution establishes. And that entire governance model is unconstitutional. Think about what Trump has been trying to do with independent agencies. The FCC, the FTC, the SEC. These exist because Congress determined that some functions need to be insulated from political pressure. They regulate markets. They protect consumers. They make decisions based on expertise and law, not based on what the president wants politically. Trump issued orders saying they report directly to him, that he can override their decisions, that he has total authority over their operations. If that had stood, there would be no more independent agencies. Just arms of the White House doing whatever Trump demanded. The National Guard issue is equally significant. The Guard has a unique dual status, normally under state control, but subject to federalization for specific purposes like national emergencies or overseas operations. But there are strict limits on using federal military forces for domestic law enforcement. That's the Posse Comitatus Act, passed after the Civil War specifically to prevent presidents from using the military as a domestic police force. Trump has been trying to bypass those restrictions entirely. The court just shut that down. The separation of powers issues are fundamental. The Constitution divides power among three branches. Congress makes laws, the president executes them, courts interpret them. Each branch checks the others, so no single branch becomes too powerful. Trump has been consistently violating that framework. He's claimed he can ignore congressional legislation. He's asserted power that requires congressional authorization without getting it. He's defied court orders and congressional subpoenas. He's treated the other branches as obstacles to overcome rather than co-equal partners. The Supreme Court just said that's unconstitutional. The president doesn't get to decide unilaterally how much power he has. The Constitution decides, and Trump has exceeded what the Constitution allows. Justice Barrett's concurrence is particularly devastating because she's a Trump appointee, a conservative justice who generally favors strong executive power. But even she looked at what Trump was doing and concluded it was too much. No president may nullify Congress by decree. That's a direct rebuke of Trump's governance style because that's exactly what he's been doing. Congress passes laws establishing how agencies should operate or what military deployments are authorized. Trump issues executive orders that effectively nullify those laws by claiming overriding authority. Barrett says that's not permissible. Executive orders can't override congressional legislation. Presidents have to work within the legal framework Congress establishes. Chief Justice Roberts' warning about unchecked authority striking at the marrow of the republic is even stronger. Roberts is not known for hyperbole. He's careful and measured. When he uses language like that, he's expressing genuine alarm. He's saying Trump's actions aren't just legally wrong, they're threatening to the survival of constitutional democracy. Because if presidents can claim unlimited power and face no effective checks, we don't have a republic anymore. We have an autocracy. The fact that this was a 7-2 decision is remarkable. Supreme Court rulings on major constitutional questions are often 5-4 splits along ideological lines. This was 7-2. That means justices across the ideological spectrum looked at Trump's assertions of power and concluded they were indefensible. The majority included all three liberal justices, Chief Justice Roberts and Justices Barrett, Kavanaugh, and Gorsuch. 3 Trump appointees voted against him. That tells you how extreme his claims were. We don't know who the 2 dissenters were, but it's likely Justices Thomas and Alito who've been most sympathetic to broad executive power. But even they couldn't get a third vote. Trump's position was so extreme that even conservative justices who might want to support him couldn't do it. The comparison to United States versus Nixon in 1974 is apt. That case established that presidents don't have unlimited executive privilege, that they can't shield information from criminal investigations just by claiming executive authority. It was a historic limitation on presidential power that contributed to Nixon's downfall. This ruling is similar in establishing clear limits on what presidents can do. They can't claim unlimited authority over independent agencies. They can't federalize military forces for domestic law enforcement without proper authorization. They can't issue executive orders that effectively nullify congressional legislation. Those are bright-line rules that will apply not just to Trump, but to all future presidents. The court is trying to prevent the presidency from becoming a dictatorship by clearly defining where executive power ends. The political implications are massive. Trump has already been facing multiple crises, and now he's lost a major court battle that undermines his ability to govern the way he wants. He can't just issue executive orders to solve problems anymore. He has to work with Congress. He has to respect independent agencies. He has to follow the law. And Trump has shown throughout his presidency that he's terrible at working within constraints. His instinct is always to bulldoze through obstacles. But the Supreme Court has just erected an obstacle he can't bulldoze through. This is also going to embolden Trump's opponents. Congressional Democrats will see this as vindication. The courts are finally checking Trump's abuses. That's going to lead to more aggressive oversight, more investigations, more demands for accountability. Because the Supreme Court has essentially said that concerns about Trump exceeding his authority are legitimate and well-founded. That's going to make it harder for Republicans to dismiss those concerns as partisan attacks. It's also going to affect the 2026 midterms. Voters will see that even a conservative Supreme Court concluded Trump was violating the Constitution. That's a powerful message. It suggests that concerns about Trump's authoritarian tendencies aren't just Democratic talking points. They're real constitutional problems that even Trump's own appointees recognize. That could sway moderate voters who might have been willing to give Trump the benefit of the doubt. The ruling could also trigger a wave of additional legal challenges and congressional investigations. If the Supreme Court says Trump exceeded his authority in these areas, people will look at other things he's done and ask whether those also exceeded his authority. There will be more lawsuits challenging other executive orders, more cases questioning whether Trump had legal authority for various actions. Courts will be more skeptical of executive power claims after this ruling. Congressional Democrats will investigate how Trump's executive orders were developed, whether legal advice was ignored, whether Trump was warned that what he was doing was unconstitutional and did it anyway. That's going to create more political headaches for an administration already drowning in scandals. And it's going to affect the Justice Department and FBI investigations. If Trump's executive power claims were illegitimate, questions arise about whether investigations and prosecutions conducted under those claims were also illegitimate. Defense attorneys in cases like Adam Schiff's indictment will argue that the prosecutions were based on authority Trump didn't legally have. That could undermine many of the political prosecutions Trump has been pursuing. White House aides are privately acknowledging that this ruling crippled much of the administration's internal authority. They're calling it a constitutional ambush. That language reveals how unexpected this was. Trump and his team apparently thought they could keep pushing the boundaries of presidential power and the courts would let them. But the Supreme Court just drew a hard line. And now Trump's entire governance model, based on unilateral executive action without congressional approval or judicial oversight, has been declared unconstitutional. So what happens next? Trump will probably attack the Supreme Court. He'll claim the decision is wrong or politically motivated. He might even hint at defying it, though that would create a full-blown constitutional crisis. White House lawyers will scramble to figure out how to salvage what they can of Trump's agenda within the new constraints. Federal agencies will need guidance on what they're supposed to do now. Congress will hold hearings about what Trump was doing and why he thought he had authority the Supreme Court says he didn't have. Democrats will use this ruling as a political weapon heading into the midterms. Republicans will be in the awkward position of trying to defend a president who just got slapped down 7-2 by a court that includes 3 of his own appointees. The bottom line is this. The Supreme Court issued a landmark 7-2 ruling striking down Trump's claims of total authority over independent agencies and state National Guard units. The decision invalidated over 30 executive orders and created immediate administrative paralysis. 3 Trump appointees joined the majority in ruling that Trump violated separation of powers and exceeded constitutional limits on presidential authority. This is the biggest judicial check on a sitting president in over 50 years. It fundamentally rejects Trump's theory of unlimited executive power. It severely limits his ability to govern for the remainder of his term. It will trigger additional legal challenges and congressional investigations. And it establishes precedents about presidential power that will shape American government for generations. Trump has been trying to turn the presidency into an elected dictatorship, and the Supreme Court just said no, emphatically, with 7 justices, including 3 Trump appointees, agreeing. That's a historic rebuke at a time when Trump is already facing multiple crises and scandals. This ruling doesn't just check Trump's power, It potentially cripples his presidency because everything he's been doing has been based on claiming authority he didn't legally have. And now the highest court in the land has told him he never had that authority and can't claim it anymore. This is a turning point. This changes everything. And it's only just beginning.